Hey team, Macho Models, I'm coming to you from a Sunday, not a weekday, with something a little bit different, a little bit exciting, a little bit daring, a little bit sexy. That's right, we're talking about a sprint build. So my dad's 70th birthday is on Thursday, which is, no kidding, 4 days from now, and I'm going to attempt to build him a 56 Thunderbird in the course of about 10 hours. So I'll give you guys a quick update on how the build's going, what I'm going to try to do, and where I'm going to try to cut corners. So let's go check it out. All right, so here is the kit in question. As it turns out, my dad's favorite car is a 56 Thunderbird. I always thought it was actually a 911. He used to love and geek out about 911s, and I thought that's where I got a lot of my 911 love from. But I don't know, over the last 5 to 10 years, it seems like he's been saying 56 Thunderbird in black is his favorite car of all time. So he turned 70 on Thursday, and I wanted to try to make him something a little bit special, and I know about what an absolute suicide mission this is. Up top, for any of you guys who have not built a ton of cars before, Monogram is an okay company. So AMT, Erdl are the really kind of devil companies where the kits are really difficult to work with. I did some research, and Monogram is a step above. It's by no means like Tamiya or anything Japanese, but it's a decent manufacturer. So that being said, I did a little bit of research. I forgot what the website is, but I'll put it in the comments. But effectively, if you type in what a kit is, like a 56 Thunderbird, for instance, it'll show you all the iterations of it in the latest release. So this was the latest release. I picked up from a guy on eBay. It actually turned out he's trying to thin out his kit collection, and he's a little bit older, and it was fun. He sent this to me with a little note saying, thanks for cleaning out my backlog, and I was happy to help. But I went with a newer kit because with the Mountain Goat, I learned a really valuable lesson about working with older kits. The older kits are cool, and I think they're a really good challenge. However, I'm not really looking for a challenge right now, and especially too, I'm glad I got this since I'm trying to sprint this and get this done by Thursday. But pretty straightforward kit. It comes with some extra runners. I won't go into depth on this, but long short is, you know, if you hold these runners, they're made of a better plastic, and then more importantly, if you get up close, there's not a ton of flash. So if you go back and look at some of my Mountain Goat videos, you'll probably see, you know, a huge stark difference in between this runner and some of the other stuff. All right, the bigger question, the build. So how the hell am I going to get this thing done by Thursday? I've actually been tooling around with this since last week. I probably started on Monday or Tuesday, my preliminary sanding. So I cut this out, and I've been doing some work. The body hasn't been too bad. I actually spent a bunch of time on the front section of the nose trying to clean up a bunch of mold lines and release lines, and it looks pretty good. The one area that I'm just gonna have to pass for time's sake is I did want to scribe this out, but I just found getting this round surface and getting this all looking clean and good was going to be really trying. So the main body is done, and so over the course of the next hour or so, I need to finish up the hood and the tire accessory. And the big sprint here today, since it's Sunday, is I need to get this primed, I need to get it painted, and I need to get it clear coated, because I'm going to use 2K again, and 2K takes 3 days to cure. And this might be a little bit of a suicide mission because, you know, if something happens with like the 2K and or if my dehumidifier stops running or whatnot, I'm really up, you know, poop creek. But I don't... The other option that I kind of kicked around was using the Alclad Aqua Gloss, which I've done before, but since I'm painting this black, I really want like a deep dark finish, and I feel relatively confident since I've used 2K twice that I can try to pull this thing off. And the other piece is I'm very modest with my expectations. I know this isn't going to be a show build, and the other big thing too here is we're our own worst critic, right? Like, you can beat yourself up all day long, but you know, if I just kind of tell this story to my dad, it's his 70th birthday, you know, mission accomplished, right? It doesn't have to be you know, first place at IPMS every single time. Just the putting the effort in, getting the gift done will usually be enough. All right, y'all, getting ready to put down some primer, but I just wanted to talk really quickly about how I'm doing this build and trying to keep things thin. So here's kind of the lay of the land of the tools that I'm using. By and large, I'm using a lot of 400 grit sandpaper to be able to get the surface ready for prep. And by surface, I mean edges or anywhere that there's flash. And then for general paint prep, and I'll cut here in a second and I'll show you guys the body and everything I've done. I don't go above or below 600, and I'll talk to that in a little bit in just a moment. So in terms of flash, like for instance, on this tail cover, there was like a good bit of flash along the edges here and a huge seam and some other pieces. I actually just ended up using 400 grit sandpaper to kind of abrade it a little bit. And then a lot of stuff I was able to get cleaned up with my Cerebur. My ceramic knife was a huge help. And the other tool, of course, I used was my hobby knife. So I'm an Olfa guy. I like the edge of this blade. Gives me a little bit more leverage and control versus the number 11 X-Acto blades. And I also use just like a number of diamond files. I know folks are kind of leery of diamond files because they think that it cuts into the plastic too much. But I found, you know, just with like the right touch and kind of keeping things light and simple, it works really well. And you can see where this triangle one got a lot of good use. I ended up using the circular one a lot, especially underneath the headlights. My flat file I kind of use sparingly because I noticed when I put this flat file on that plastic, it would melt it pretty quickly. But if I did this first and then followed up with my 400 or 600 grit sandpaper, everything worked out all right. I also have this trumpeter scribing tool too as well, and you can kind of see I've got my BMC chisel out, and that was just to really go over a couple spots and kind of dig in just a little bit deeper. But by and large, this was everything that I used to get the surface prep, and I'll cut here in a second. I'll show you my prime setup. All right, so priming. This is nothing too different than what a lot of y'all folks have been seeing, and if you're joining for me for the first time, welcome. Super cool to have you. So I kind of talked to the body. Prep-wise, it's looking good. I'll share out, my airbrush is blocking it, so don't worry about that. I'll share out my inspiration for this. There's a YouTube channel, I think it's called the International Scale Modeler. It's a dude who wears a GoPro. He's super chill. He's from Europe. I love his videos. They're very, very relaxing. But he has a very straightforward process that I absolutely love watching, and I'm curious to see how it's going to go in execution. So what he does is he gets the body ready like I did. He then uses 600 grit sandpaper and sands all over, and uses his primer. And after the primer dries, he comes back with a 3000 grit sandpaper to get the surface ready. Then he lays his paint down, then he puts his 2K. So I'm emulating the exact same piece. And much like you probably have seen or heard me talk about or seen my perfect primer video, I'm just using, oh man, I'm trying to do this on camera. My Mr. Finishing Surfacer 1500 black. I mix this 1:1. Drop it in there and it should be good to go. I'm using my hardened Stenback. This is my 0.4, so it's gonna have a wider coverage and it should get the job done pretty quickly. But I'm gonna cut here and I'll come back in 30 minutes or so and I'll let you guys know how the priming process went. All right, y'all, got the primer done and life is looking pretty good. So you can hear the compressor running in the background. I'm just waiting for this to dry off a little bit. I probably finished that last part maybe 5 minutes ago. I'm pointing to the hood that's off camera. And I've been hitting with a hair dryer and just kind of hanging out. I'm not going to wait more than 15 minutes. And then the next phase is to hit it with a 3000 grit sanding sponge. And I can already see there's a couple real small little imperfections and dust that I want to be able to get at. Actually, this looks pretty good. But yeah, the filler primer rocks, and you know, just another kind of good reason to think about using lacquer paints if you're in acrylic. You know, in theory, I'm going to be able to get all these paints down kind of one after another since the paint evaporates so quickly since it's alcohol based, which rules. In terms of a filler primer, I can kind of see it's a little hard, but there's some small scratches in here, but I'm hoping the 3000 grit takes care of that. And then the follow-on coat of paint, and then certainly the 2K paint is going to fill in a bunch. And color-wise, I'm going to use this Splash Beluga Black. I've had this for a really long time, and I've actually wanted to paint a Zaku with it. But this is a Bentley Black, so it's just a really nice, deep black color. I'm curious to see what the difference is between the primer and this. I can't imagine it's going to be a huge leap forward, but then again, Splash has a tendency to surprise me. I can also see, too, there's like a tiny bit of fleck in this, so this should all come out and look pretty nice. And a good plug for Splash and some SMS type paints. These are ready mixed, so in terms of speed, I just drop my pipette in here, put it in my airbrush, and I'm good to go. And the other kind of rad thing too, since it's black primer coat and then black paint, is I didn't have to do any huge cleanup between my airbrush. I just swapped it out, put some alcohol in there, ran it a couple times, and it's hanging out right now. So I'll come back after the sanding's done, or maybe I'll come back after the paint and let y'all know how everything went. All right, team, so I skipped the paint portion, but the only thing to report there is everything worked out pretty good. So just to recap, I used a 3000 grit sandpaper on the primed body to kind of like kink out any imperfections, and it looks pretty good. There's a couple little pieces of lint and hair. You can see one right there, but overall it looks pretty solid. So post this, I put my paint down, and I'm really curious to see how this turned out. So as it turns out with the splash paints, this was actually quite thick. So I kind of wish in retrospect I thinned it a little bit, but again, I'm trying to make this a speed build, so I gotta move. But I did go back after putting paint down, and I saw that there was a little piece of lint caught in here, and so I pulled it out using my little pointy tweezers, and as a matter of fact, it marred up the surface just a little bit. So I went back and I sprayed it, and it looks perfect. But what I'm really curious about is kind of examining the paint finish before. The spot where I sprayed it compared to the spot next to it kind of stood out. So I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that once I get my gloss coat of 2K down, it'll go ahead and clear that. And speaking of 2K, what you're seeing now is the first tack coat of 2K. So after I got done spraying, I probably waited maybe 5 or 10 minutes before I started my 2K mixture. I got my 2K down, and this is the first coat. So the first coat is just kind of a sticky coat, and you can see where I went on a little thick on this portion. And you're supposed to spray this down. They say do a medium coat and then wait 5 to 10 minutes. The next coat, it's the way that they frame it on the website is they say you want to spray it wet but not heavy. And the way that I read it is just to the point where you can kind of break surface tension on there and it gets glassy, but you don't want it to go any further than that. So I'm going to wait and see if this to gas out just a little bit more, and then I'm going to put my glossy coat down, and with any luck, it'll be before 5 p.m., which I'm supposed to tag Emily off and then grab Frank. But overall, it's going well. Again, I'm just kind of metering my expectations. I'm not looking for a perfect finish, but I'm striving for the best finish I can kind of possibly do given my creative constraints. All right, y'all. I hope you guys dug that. That'll probably be part 1 of 3, I'm guessing. And if you caught the little tail end there, the fatal flaw that I made was within the paint. So I noted that I wish I had thinned it. And as a result, that's where a lot of my problems are going to come later on down the line. So I'll talk to that more in parts 2 or 3. But if you want to expand that conversation, jump into the comments below and we can kick around some ideas. Also, if this is your first time joining in because you saw Thunderbird, Monogram, whatnot, please subscribe, like, and as I mentioned a moment ago, leaving a comment is super cool. Thanks for tuning in. Again, this is part 1. I hope to kick you guys at least one more chapter, maybe a third. And be sure whatever you guys are getting after, be sure whatever you guys are working on, you're out there and you're making it macho.